Today, we're diving into a story of high-stakes conspiracy, deadly peril, and a deliverance that literally changed the course of history. We're going way back to the ancient land of Ur, and this isn't just some dramatic tale, it's a pivotal moment and it's drawn directly from Abraham's own record.
And it starts with these absolutely chilling words from the man himself. There's no slow build-up here. We are thrown right into a life-or-death struggle. So you have to wonder, who wanted Abraham dead and why? Well, the plot against Abraham wasn't random at all. This was a calculated conspiracy. It involved some of the most powerful people in the land, and they were all targeting one young man who just dared to stand against their traditions.
And when you look at who was involved, it's pretty revealing. You've got a priest of a local god, Elkanah, who, and this is critical, also served the pharaoh of Egypt. So right away, this local conflict is tied to international power. But the really shocking part, the last point, Abraham's own fathers were in on the plot. I mean, can you imagine the betrayal? The very people meant to protect you are the ones planning your end?
And you know what? Their conspiracy worked. Abraham, a prince of his people, was captured. He was dragged to a very public and ominous place of sacrifice, Potiphar's Hill. The trap was sprung, and he was completely at their mercy. So this brings us to the scene of the sacrifice itself. The plan is now in its final, terrifying stage. They've got Abraham exactly where they want him, and the atmosphere is just heavy with dread. Just look at the power that was stacked against him. This wasn't just some back-alley altar. It was a stage set before a whole pantheon of local gods. And you gotta notice that last one, a god made in the likeness of Pharaoh. This tells you the sacrifice was as much a political act of loyalty to Egypt as it was a religious one. And get this, Abraham himself actually left us an illustration of this altar. His description is so specific. It was shaped like a bedstead, but with these menacing lion features carved into its frame. It was an instrument designed for both worship and, well, terror. The record also adds another really specific visual detail. Abraham's drawing depicts a dark-skinned priest, and that description is actually consistent with what historians from the period said about the ancient Egyptians. It really grounds this whole account in its time and place. So here's the crucial point. Abraham was completely and totally alone. The source tells us there was no one influential enough to step in and save him. He's bound, the priests are ready, the knife is prepared. This is it. This is the absolute lowest point, the moment right before the end. But then, just when all hope seems lost, the entire narrative just flips on its head. The story shifts from a human conspiracy to a divine intervention, a rescue from a power far, far greater than any priest or pharaoh.
As they got ready for what's described as a really cruel and horrible death after the manner of the Egyptians, you have to ask yourself, was this really it? Was this how Abraham's story was going to end?
The answer is a huge no. In his own words, Abraham tells us that in that exact moment, the angel of his presence stood by me and immediately unloosed my bands. All of a sudden, just like that, he's free.
And the intervention didn't stop there. A powerful force, maybe lightning, maybe an earthquake, just descends on the whole scene. The altar is smashed to pieces, the idols of their gods are completely destroyed, and the priest who was about to strike the fatal blow, he himself was struck down and died. Justice was swift and it was absolute. The fallout from this was immense. I mean, we're told there was mourning all the way from Chaldea to the court of Pharaoh in Egypt. But the record makes a really critical distinction here. This wasn't the sorrow of people who realized they were wrong. No, it was the sorrow of the wicked, the sorrow of people who just saw their power, their priest and their gods publicly shattered while their victim just walked away free. But this whole event was so much more than just a dramatic rescue. It actually built into something even more profound, because in that very moment of deliverance, Abraham received a life-altering revelation about his future and his purpose. The voice of the Lord spoke to him, promising not just survival, but a whole new destiny. He was going to be taken from his father's house, the very people who just tried to kill him, and he would be led to a new land, a totally fresh start. And the reason for all this was made crystal clear. The divine intervention was a direct response to the people turning away to worship idols, and it was a specific punishment for the priest who had raised his hand to take Abraham's life. Then comes this incredible promise. Abraham is told he will receive the priesthood of thy father. Now that is a profound statement, especially when you remember his father had just tried to have him killed. So what on earth could this mean? Well, the source explains this refers to the patriarchal priesthood, an order that was meant to pass directly from father to son. So, even though his own father's wickedness had broken that sacred chain, the Lord was assuring Abraham that the line of authority would not be lost. It would be restored and given directly to him.
And so we're left with this really powerful question, aren't we? How can a moment of ultimate peril become the very catalyst for a divine destiny? Here's a man betrayed by his own family, brought to the absolute brink of death. And yet, that very moment of terror becomes the explosive starting point for his divine mission. It just makes you wonder, how often are our greatest trials the very foundation for our greatest callings?